The hospital corridor smelled of antiseptic and fear, and Daniel Harper could still hear the echo of her laughter in his mind as he rolled up his sleeve. Years ago, in a room filled with polished glass and expensive perfume, she had looked at his worn suit and trembling hands and called him pathetic. Tonight, her child was fighting for her life, and his blood was the only match. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet strength of people who refuse to become bitter, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment about what kindness means to you, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us why compassion still matters in this world. Daniel never imagined his life would circle back to Victoria Hale, the formidable CEO of Hale Industries. 3 years earlier, he had stood in the lobby of her corporate headquarters, clutching a thin folder that contained his entire future. He had once been a promising financial analyst at a smaller firm, but after his wife, Emily, fell sick with a rare autoimmune disease, everything changed. Hospital bills swallowed their savings. Sleepless nights eroded his focus. When Emily passed away, Daniel was left with grief heavier than the earth itself and a 5-year-old daughter, Lily, who kept asking when Mommy was coming home. He tried to hold everything together. He juggled 2 part-time jobs, sold his car, moved into a modest apartment, and poured every ounce of strength into raising Lily. But the world is not always gentle with grieving fathers. His employers saw his exhaustion as incompetence. Eventually, he lost his job. That was when he applied to Hale Industries. It was his last hope. He prepared for weeks, studying their reports, memorizing statistics, rehearsing answers in the mirror while Lily colored on the floor behind him. On the day of the interview, he wore his only suit, the one he had worn at Emily's funeral. It hung loosely on his thinner frame. When he entered the sleek conference room, Victoria Hale barely looked up from her tablet. She was known across the city as a visionary leader, brilliant, decisive, and intimidating. Her success stories filled business magazines. But compassion was not a word often used to describe her. Daniel stumbled during the presentation. His voice shook when he mentioned the employment gap. When Victoria asked about it, he told the truth. About Emily's illness, about raising Lily alone. The room fell silent. For a moment, he thought he saw a flicker of understanding in her eyes. Instead, she leaned back and remarked, cool and sharp, that Hale Industries required resilience and focus, not personal baggage. She said that excuses did not build empires. A faint, dismissive smile curved her lips. Daniel felt the heat of humiliation crawl up his neck. He thanked her for her time and walked out, feeling smaller than he ever had before. That night, he held Lily close as she slept, and promised himself he would never let her see how deeply those words had cut him. Time passed. Daniel found work as a delivery driver and later as a warehouse assistant. The pay was modest, but he managed. He packed Lily's lunches with little notes that said, "You are my sunshine." He attended every school recital, even if it meant missing sleep. Life was not glamorous, but it was full of quiet love. Then came the night that changed everything. It was raining when Daniel's phone buzzed with an emergency alert from the local hospital. He had signed up months ago as a rare blood type donor after learning his blood group was uncommon. The message was urgent. A child had been admitted after a severe accident and needed immediate transfusion. The hospital was searching desperately for a match. Daniel did not hesitate. He dropped Lily off at his neighbor Mrs. Thompson's apartment, kissed her forehead, and drove through the storm. At the hospital, nurses moved with frantic precision. He was led into a donation room, where he caught fragments of hushed conversations. The child was in critical condition, internal bleeding, surgery underway. As he lay back in the chair and the needle pierced his vein, Daniel stared at the ceiling tiles and whispered a silent prayer. He did not know the child. He did not need to. He only knew that somewhere nearby, a parent was living their worst nightmare. Minutes later, as he rested in the recovery area with a bandage on his arm, a familiar voice shattered the stillness. Victoria Hale stood at the end of the corridor, her usually immaculate appearance undone by tears and panic. Her daughter, Ava, had been struck by a reckless driver while crossing the street after school. The doctors had said she would not survive without an immediate transfusion. No family member was a match. Victoria's world, built on control and precision, had collapsed into chaos. She paced the corridor, clutching her phone, issuing instructions to assistants who could do nothing to help her now. Money could not buy compatible blood. When a nurse approached her and said a donor had just completed the transfusion, Relief flooded her face. She asked to thank him. Daniel stood slowly when he saw her walking toward him. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Recognition dawned in her eyes. First confusion, then disbelief. He looked different now, stronger somehow. The humiliation of years ago had been replaced by quiet steadiness. There was no bitterness in his gaze, only exhaustion and empathy. Victoria's lips parted, but no words came. She remembered the interview. She remembered the thin folder, the trembling voice. She remembered her own cutting remark. The nurse explained that Daniel's blood had been a perfect match. Ava's vitals were stabilizing. Victoria's composure crumbled. The woman who commanded boardrooms and billion-dollar deals suddenly looked like any other terrified mother. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered a broken thank you. Daniel simply nodded. He said he was glad he could help. There was no mention of the past, no accusation, no attempt to remind her of her cruelty. In that moment, none of it mattered. A child had a chance to live. As the hours passed, Victoria sat beside Ava's hospital bed, watching the rise and fall of her daughter's chest. The steady beep of the monitor became the most precious sound she had ever heard. She thought about how close she had come to losing everything that truly mattered. And she thought about Daniel. The next morning, she requested his contact information. At first, Daniel was hesitant when he received her call. He feared another humiliation, another reminder of his lower status. But her voice was different, softer, stripped of arrogance. She asked to meet. They met in a quiet cafe far from corporate towers and hospital corridors. Victoria arrived without her usual entourage. She looked tired, human. She told him that Ava had regained consciousness. The doctors believed she would make a full recovery. She said she had spent the entire night replaying their interview in her mind. She had prided herself on being objective, on separating emotion from business. But somewhere along the way, she had mistaken vulnerability for weakness. Daniel listened without interrupting. She confessed that watching him donate blood without hesitation had forced her to confront something uncomfortable. He had shown more strength in that single act than she had in years of corporate triumphs. Daniel spoke quietly about Lily, about losing Emily, about the nights he doubted himself. He admitted that her words had hurt deeply, but they had also fueled his determination to prove that resilience is not loud or flashy. Sometimes it is simply waking up every day and choosing not to give up. Victoria offered him a position at Hale Industries. Not out of pity, she insisted, but because she had revisited his application and realized she had overlooked genuine talent. She wanted him to lead a new community outreach initiative focused on supporting employees facing personal crises. Daniel did not answer immediately. He thought of Lily, of stability, of second chances. He also thought of pride. In the end, he accepted, not for revenge or validation, but for growth. Months later, Hale Industries launched a foundation that provided financial counseling, flexible schedules, and emergency support for struggling families. The initiative was inspired by Daniel's story, though he never allowed his name to be publicized. He worked diligently, transforming policies and changing lives quietly, one family at a time. Victoria changed too. She began leaving the office earlier to attend Ava's school events. She listened more in meetings. She remembered that behind every resume was a human story. One afternoon, Daniel stood outside Lily's school auditorium as she performed in a small play. In the audience, he noticed Victoria and Ava sitting a few rows back, smiling encouragingly. The two families had formed an unlikely friendship, bound not by status, but by shared gratitude. As Lily took her bow, Daniel felt something shift inside him. The pain of the past no longer felt heavy. It had become part of a larger story, a story where humiliation did not have the final word. Life did not become perfect. There were still bills, challenges, moments of doubt. But there was also hope. There was the knowledge that kindness can ripple outward in ways we cannot predict. Before we close, if this story has touched your heart even a little, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in redemption, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the power of compassion. Your support helps these messages reach the people who need them most. And here is a special request. Comment, "Kindness always wins," if you believe that even the smallest act of humanity can change a life. Daniel once walked into a glass tower and left feeling invisible. Years later, he walked into a hospital and became someone's miracle. Victoria once measured success in profit margins and stock prices. Now, she measured it in bedtime stories and second chances. Sometimes, the person we dismiss today becomes the very one who saves us tomorrow. And sometimes, the greatest strength is not in power or prestige, but in the quiet courage to give, even when the world has given you very little in return. In the end, it was not the blood that changed everything. It was the grace.